Hello everyone, this is Lorcana World, and today I wanted to start a series of basic explanations for what it's like to go to a tournament for the game of Lorcana, and discuss a few terms you may hear if you are a brand new player to a TCG, okay? So this is your first TCG game, is Disney Lorcana. If you guys have played Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon or Magic, or you're familiar with going to tournaments on a regular basis, you could skip this video. Okay, I will have in-depth videos that you can watch later on that will be more about the current meta. But this is just a discussion about just the term meta. Different terms you should know as a player going to your first Lorcana tournament, okay? Or wanting to play competitively for the first time. So I know plenty of people play Lorcana with their friends and have a good time and build different decks and just play for fun. But if you want to take it to a local tournament or higher, I'm going to do a series of videos explaining how this game works in a meta or in a competitive setting. Okay, and I might relate that to other games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic or Pokemon. But I just want the basis of these videos to be a very beginner friendly. Okay? So let me start off by defining what a meta is. So a meta is the top decks, the best decks that win the most. They have the highest win rates. Okay? And I brought out a lot of sample cards to show you guys. Not all of them are meta, but they all have functionally similar effects that would help you build a meta deck, okay? And I'll get into that in a little bit. So the beginning of this is a lot of just listening, okay? And then we'll get into some specifics. So a meta, again, is just the top 2 or 3 decks that you're going to see the most when you go to a tournament, okay? Now, the next part is anti-meta. So with the meta being only the top 2 to 3 decks, people will build specific strategies in order to combat the current top decks. If you look at Lorcana right now, the top deck is Ruby and Sapphire. Okay? It's one of the top decks. Okay, it's one of the meta decks. And it has to do with items. Okay? So someone may build an anti-meta deck against items. Okay? Now, there is a tier system when it comes to building different decks. When we rate these top winning decks, we put them in different categories. We have tier 0, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Okay, tier 3 are decks that are really not that competitive, that you may end up just having fun with, playing against your friends. But if you take it to a local tournament, the odds of you winning are very low. Okay? For instance, this card, Merlin, looks fantastic because you can use shift to play him and you get to add any card in your deck to your hand. At first I saw that, I'm like, oh my god, it's going to be great. But it's not a meta card. It's not being used. It would probably be in a tier 3 deck just for fun. Okay? And my guess is because the shift cost is too high. Okay? And there's other ways to get your cards faster. But there is tier 2. Now, tier 2 decks, if there's... I have to backtrack a little bit, because I should actually explain what tier 0 is first before I get into anything else. A tier 0 format is where there's a deck that nothing can beat. It is so good, nothing will beat it. Maybe an anti-meta deck, a deck specifically to counter that tier 0 deck. But otherwise, tier 0 decks run the entire format, and they're very, very hard to win against. Okay? Most of the time, that doesn't happen. When a game is very, very imbalanced, like Yu-Gi-Oh!, there's been plenty of tier 0 decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay? The game is unbalanced. But most of the time, you're going to get a tier 1, tier 2, and a tier 3. Okay? So in the healthier format, a tier 2 deck is something that maybe isn't as popular, but can, with a good pilot, and when I mean pilot, I mean player. Okay, that's a term you may hear, pilot. They could still beat a tier 1. Maybe there's certain tech choices or certain cards that people don't think of that they're using that can combat the top tier decks. So, and then of course there's tier 1, which are, again, the highest win rate. Okay, that doesn't mean you can't win with a tier 2 deck, but tier 1's the best. Okay? So what makes a deck a tier 1? So in Lorcana, we only can use 2 colors. Okay, in Magic, you can use as many colors as you want. Doesn't matter Pokemon, doesn't matter Yu-Gi-Oh!, completely different. What makes a deck good? There's a few things. There's really 3 types of decks in Lorcana right now. There's aggro decks, which want to control the board as quickly as possible and gain as much lore as fast as possible. Okay, they're going to gain lore every turn. They're going to try to win as fast as possible. And for a while, there was times where aggro was very, very good. Okay? Then there's kind of the middle of the ground. They're called mid-range. This is an example of a color combination. That's a mid-range. It has some good early plays, but it's more securing the middle of the game. And then we have these 2 colors right now are your long game, okay? They build up their ink and they play big characters to remove your opponent's stuff and then gain a lot of lore, okay? But what makes each of those specifically good? And there's certain things, certain characteristics, and this goes across all card games. One of them is draw power. One of the number one things you want to see is more cards of your deck. You want to have as many options in your hand as possible to deal with whatever threats your opponent has. You don't know specifically what exactly your opponent is going to have every game, so you need to be able to deal with whatever threats they do have. Therefore, you want to see as many cards as you possibly can. You want to draw. Okay, this card lets you draw too by singing. This lets you draw by playing a Floodborn. Okay? There's also digging through your deck. So this card, for instance, Vision of the Future, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You get to pick one and put in your hand and put the rest on the bottom of your deck. Now you're adding a 1-for-1. So this gets you another card, but you get an option out of 5. Okay, to get something you need. Maybe it's something you need to get rid of a card on your opponent's side of the board. So you want to be able to dig through your deck, have draw power, and you want to ink really fast. So, Tipo, Growing Sun, allows you to put another card into your inkwell face down. That's called ramp. That means getting as many in your inkwell early game. So your first 3 turns, you're just trying to get like 4 or 5 cards in your inkwell. And then you're going to start dropping bigger characters to deal with your opponent. Okay? In Magic, blue-green is usually a ramp deck to get big creatures out. Big, nasty, strong, unstoppable creatures. Okay? In Lorcana, it's about getting out these big guys that can take care of your opponent's threats. Okay? So those are several strategies already that you want to use. Lets you draw. Now, with aggro decks, it's a little different. There is some draw, but very little. It's really about cheap characters on board as fast as possible. Okay? When I used to play Magic, I would use black and white, and there'd be a lot of different aggro strategies. A lot of different 1/1s or 1/0s or tokens or whatever you could muster up. In this game, there's tons of options of low-cost characters that you can just quest for 2 every turn. So you're there to outdo your opponent. So speed, okay? Those are the different strategies that make a tier 1 deck possible. Okay? The other one is controlling the board. So something that Amethyst Emerald does very well with is bouncing cards, controlling what's on the board. Eventually, these guys wipe the floor with whatever's on the board. Okay, so you also have to factor in not only your hand size, not only your ink, but how quickly you could deal with your opponent's threats, because they are going to be trying to gain lore as well. Now, there's one thing this game does not have, I wanted to mention before this video is over, that the Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic has. This game is very similar to Magic, okay? Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! Both have cards you can play during your opponent's turn. In Magic, it's called an instant. In Yu-Gi-Oh! They have hand traps and trap cards. This game does not have that. So anything I do on my turn, there's nothing stopping me. There's nothing my opponent can play during my turn to stop me. In Magic, let's say I play Tipo and my opponent has mana. They could exert their mana and play an instant that gets rid of my Tipo or stops the effect from being used. This game doesn't have that. So that's one level of complexity you do not have to worry about in case you've had some experience with the other card games. Okay? So there's just my overall spiel with what a meta is. And from here on out, there's going to be a series of videos that are going to handle how you build your decks, different color combinations, different things having to do with going to a tournament, especially if this is your first ever game. Okay, if you have any questions, you could put them in the comments, and I will answer whenever I can. Thanks for watching.